Does the podcasting process bring you joy? Because if it doesn't, then it's going to be difficult to stay motivated and consistent. Tabatha Thorell launched her second podcast, What Went Wrong, last year, where she tells the untold stories of bouncing back from failure. Throughout her podcasting journey, she's discovered how to find more joy in the process and bring more value to her guests, and her listeners. And in this episode, we cover finding joy in the podcasting process, streamlining your podcast workflow so that you can stay consistent, how to outsource in a way that works for you, how to guide guests to get the most out of them and give your audience more value, 4 things every entrepreneur should know, and plenty more. If you want to get and give more joy and value from your podcast, then keep listening. Tabatha, welcome to Podcasting Amplified. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good, thanks. So Tabatha Thorell hosts What Went Wrong, which is a podcast where she shares the untold stories of bouncing back from failure. She's also a wife, a proud mum to 5 amazing girls, a dynamic speaker, author, life and business coach, podcaster, and seasoned real estate investor. Did I get everything there?
I think so. I think that's all the hats that I wear, but I probably throw in referee, chauffeur in there, all the things that a parent is. But yes, those are, I guess, my official titles.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. You've been podcasting for about 6 months now. What made you decide that podcasting was the right thing for your business? And is it specifically for your business? What are you hoping to get out of putting this podcast together?
Well, I started a podcast back in 2018 when I branched off and started my own fitness business. I always listen to lots of podcasts, and I was like, oh man, I have all this knowledge that I'm getting, and, doing content live and stuff was fun. So everyone's like, start a podcast. And so I did it without any help. And at the time we had 3 kids and we were investors. My husband is a farmer, so we have that business, and I was having my coaching business, and throwing podcaster in there, it sounded really good, but the execution of it, of being able to edit everything and get everything out and, promote it, and it was just overwhelming. So I just kind of stopped. And so it progressed. We had a couple more kids, a couple more businesses, and a friend of mine said, you're building all these really awesome connections with people. You need to have a platform for them to come, to invite them. And I was like, okay. He's like, you need a podcast. And I was like, I know. He's like, you have a wealth of knowledge. He just kept, pushing this. And I was like, finally, I was like, I would love to, but I can't do it all myself. And he's like, I have this great podcasting guy that can help edit them, just connect with them. So I was like, well, let's just give it a shot. So I met with this guy named RJ, and he's like, we can do as much or as little as you want. If you just want to do the interview and hand it off to us, we can do everything. And I was like, okay, but literally, I'm not making money on this yet. So it needs to be in the realm, because I'm a businesswoman, so I got to keep things tight, if I want to keep making money. So he was very reasonable and so knowledgeable, and just worked with me through the process. And I said, okay, I'm going to look at this as an investment, as in business, and I'm going to give it a year. I'm not going to, do what I did before and go 3 months in and think, nothing's working, and then just give up. I'm going to give it a solid year. I had a goal of doing 1 a week. So I was like, at least 50 podcasts. I want to do at least 50 podcasts before I really assess anything or make any dramatic decisions. So that's just what I did. And I planned for that financially. I'm going to invest in this. I knew what my cost was. And I was like, I want to do this not only because I was building these relationships and I wanted to bring people in, but I wanted to create an atmosphere where people could tell their stories and other people could get hope from them. Because in my journey, I've been an entrepreneur for over 16 years. We've been investing in real estate for almost 20. So really, I believe that is like entrepreneurship. So really 2 decades. And there have been a lot of ups and downs. And the thing that got me through was listening to people's stories of perseverance and dedication and going through hard things and coming out of those hard things and what people did with that. And that's what gave me hope. And I was like, I know I'm not alone in this. And so I just wanted a platform for people to listen to where, they might be feeling down and out, and they listen to a story and they connect with somebody and they're like, okay, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep moving. Even if that's in a relationship, even if that's in weight loss, business, maybe their life. I mean, there's a lot of people that they're one day away from committing suicide and they hear a story and it just connects with their soul. And they're like, I decided to, not do that and take a step forward toward my dreams. And, so that was really where the premise of it came from. And of course, I'm a businesswoman. So yes, I want to monetize it. So it's definitely different levels. And so when I look at it and I analyze it, I can't just look at one thing, because if somebody tells me they listened to the podcast and it was amazing, it changed their life, okay, I keep going. The money might not be there yet, but it's like, okay, I have to look at all facets, not just one.
Great. Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned it's not monetized yet. What does that look like when it is eventually? Is this sort of related more to your business coaching? Just looking at the guests you have, it seems like that kind of audience, or are there different facets to it?
Yeah. So my target audience for my current coaching business, which we just are doing kind of a soft launch this summer, is to really help entrepreneurial families invest in their first income properties and then take those wealth principles and teach them to their kids so that you have generational wealth. And so it's kind of thinking outside the box when people think of normal like wealth building or generational stuff. I always think of that's kind of boring. And so we bring people in, we help them invest in real estate. We show them streamline process that's very easy and obtainable. And so that's our target audience. So, people ask me like, why don't you do a podcast on real estate? And, I could. There's amazing real estate podcasts out there. So I definitely was like, I don't really want to compete with them. That doesn't give me a lot of fulfillment. I was like, if I teach people real estate, they can come into our group. We have free groups, we have paid groups, and I can teach them those things. But the purpose of my podcast was to really span the reach and, like I said, give people hope. But they're definitely our target audience. So it's like those entrepreneurs that are feeling that. And then they hear what our business is. They might be intrigued, like, oh man, okay, like that is something I'm interested in. I will go into that. So even though it's not like directly tied to, real estate, our business is more than just real estate too. So it's definitely helping families create an atmosphere of wealth growth for generations. And so it's like, that's kind of hard to do in just a podcast. I think it makes it a little bit too narrow. I did want to broaden it a little bit, again, because my purpose was to help people share their stories, to give hope, but it's definitely targeted toward our ideal clientele that would come into our business.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, having that sort of narrow target audience helps stand out against more broad ones anyway, if they feel that they're in that specific group that your podcast is designed for. And so you started this new podcast about 6 months ago. It's weekly. You're also doing the video side of things. How much of that is you? How much time does that take you each week? I know you've got your editor supporting you as well.
So honestly, I just do the interviews. And so it just depends how many interviews I have in a week. In the beginning, like the first 4 or 5 months, I just pretty much did one interview a week because I do a lot of guest podcasting. So for mine, I would do mine and then it'd be fresh in my head. So like ideas for, promotions were right there. And I'd send it to my team and do that. And so they do all the editing. I'll give suggestions for like titles and stuff like that. And if they come up with one and I don't like it, I'll tweak it, or I'll go and tweak some stuff if I feel the need. And just kind of going through that. And then my husband listens to all the episodes because I'll listen to it. But when you give an interview, it's like you almost hear parts of it. I want a fresh set of ears who like can tell me, hey, your intro wasn't as good this time, or, oh, this overlapped here, because sometimes I don't hear that because I'm in the interview and it's like, I'm always on to the next thing. And so he listens to all of them and gets them, gives me feedback on that. But really just an hour a week. But now I'll batch them. And so I'll do like 3 or 4 all at once, and then we roll them out as needed. And so I actually think I'll end up with more than 50, because towards the end of the year, or, once it is more monetized, then I can do 2 a week just for my editing team. Then, we'll do that. We're getting a lot of really quality guests. And so it's like, I hate to not have them because, I'm only doing 1 a week. And so we'll see within the next couple months, but I am getting some really high quality guests and batching those. And I like that, but I have to be careful, just because I like to really, put time and effort into like the title and how we're going to promote this and connecting with the guests. And sometimes I feel like when we rush to get through it, like sometimes the details get kind of rushed with that. So just kind of, again, I'm still new. And so just finding out what works for me and my team. But the team does really great about like last minute stuff. If I'm like, oh, we need to switch this guest around, or can we get this one edited? Like, they're really great about that. I just get to come in and interview the guest, and it's been fun. I've got to meet some amazing people and hear some amazing stories.
Yeah, I can resonate with what you're saying about not necessarily wanting to listen back to the interview you've just done, because we do podcast production, and I work with a lot of our clients doing editing. But after the first few of this podcast, I handed it over to Roger, one of our editors, because I just prefer to have a second set of ears, and he probably edits them down more than even I would, and sort of keeps them focused. So that's good, and keeps you from getting burnt out as well. So has it been a challenge? Because obviously you've got a lot on, and five children. I've got one, and even that can be a challenge with fitting things in sometimes. But how do you fit all this in alongside your business and then everything else?
I get this question a lot about like, how do you balance it? How do you do this? Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, I just set a goal for myself that I was going to, be on so many podcasts or so many stages and really get my voice out, because I had just really not put a lot of effort into that. And I was like, I'm going to do this. It was kind of like the podcast. Like, I'm just going to do this with my head down, just do it, give value. And of course, promote my stuff and have a business and have an offer and do that stuff, but just go, and not necessarily stop because, I wasn't as far as I wanted. I think as entrepreneurs, we always think, Tony Robbins says we overestimate what we can do in a year. We underestimate what we can do in 10. Yeah. And so I was like, for at least the year, like, I'm just going to go and be on as many as I can. And for the first 5 months, I did it all like myself and like networking in different groups. And I was able to do it and it was fun, but I was just kind of like a logistical nightmare, because I was trying to keep track of all these podcasts that I was on and then the guests that I would get and all that stuff. And so then when I found Podmatch, which is how we met, it has made it so much more streamlined, and it's allowed me to kind of pick and choose which ones I'm on, because my time is very valuable and I like to give value in every platform. And I really try not to be super picky, but it's like, I need to know my audience is there at least, Yeah. And so it's like getting my story out there and stuff. And so with my podcast, I'm so goal oriented in that of like, just stay focused on what you said you were going to do. You said you were going to do 1 a week. Just stay focused on that. Cause I go to the numbers and I'm like, oh, we don't have very many downloads. Oh, nobody's seeing this on YouTube, and you can get wrapped up in that. And then you spend all your energy and your time on that rather than just going out there, promoting it the best that I can. And we all know it's like, it's loud out there. There's how many podcasts and YouTube channels and content on Facebook and Instagram, and there's TikTok reels. And, we have all this stuff. And I feel like it just stops us from just doing what we're called to do. And I'm called to speak and I'm called to impact. And if I refine that and I keep going on these podcasts and giving value to your audience or somebody else's audience, it will work. And just trusting that process rather than getting frustrated in it. Even in my podcast, I have devoted a certain amount of hours a week to my work. And I really worked on saying, I'm only going to do so many hours of podcasting. And it's pretty much overrun my day to day. And so like even launching our business this summer, it's been really a soft launch because it's like I focused so much on the organic marketing of getting, my word out there on podcasts. But at the same time, it's like, okay, now I need to really focus and rev up in this area because this is like the income building, side of things. So it's just constantly looking at the business and pivoting and saying, okay, what do I love doing? What brings me joy? Because I love giving value. I love speaking. I love teaching and training. So if I don't have at least a minimum of 5 hours a week of doing that, I feel run down. Like if all I'm doing is like sales and marketing and like, just the busyness of the work, I get really run down. So I just tell people, like, if you're doing a podcast and you're doing it all, that's fine, especially in the business. And if you like editing or you can do it and you want to do it in the beginning to save some money, but if it's running you down, like when I first started the podcast, all that stuff was just running me down and I wasn't doing enough of the things that brought me joy. I quit. Because pretty soon, if you're not doing stuff that brings you joy, you either have resentment, you'll turn to other things that bring you joy that aren't productive. That's why a lot of people, drink or turn to porn or shopping or whatever, because they're so unhappy with what they're doing. So it's like, don't just do a podcast because somebody told you to do a podcast and you hate it all the things. For me, I'm not a fan of editing. I can't listen to myself. I am too critical. I would spend 8 hours a week probably just analyzing everything and editing it to be perfect. And so I had to hire that and said, I'm going to put that out there. I love doing the interviews. I love speaking on other people's. And I just make sure that I allow myself in the week to do that. And then for my kids, I have to be flexible because they might have an appointment or they might be sick or they might do this and they might, and I'm mom first. And so it's like, I know my priorities of that. No one can replace me as a mom, but somebody can replace me as a podcast guest. So I just really have those in check and just letting my people know. And I think I'm up to about close to 60 podcast interviews and only 2 times have I ever had to reschedule. So it's like, I really try to work, with the, person that I'm on, or even I've never had to reschedule a guest on my podcast. But again, when you're only doing like 1 guest a week, that's a little bit more feasible to do. If you're doing multiple and stuff, sometimes it can get a little hairy, but that's what works for me. It's like, I learned to hire out what drained me of my energy and I learned to do with the things that just bring me energy. And then it just all kind of works out.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So it's the interviews themselves that bring you energy. What about it in particular do you get out of just doing those interviews? So say, it sounds like the podcast is bringing benefits to you, even if it doesn't have a direct sort of return on investment yet. What is it about the interviews that are really bringing you joy?
I love hearing people's stories and taking what somebody has, especially if they haven't, because when you're talking about failure or disappointment, going back there, sometimes you can be embarrassed. You can feel maybe a little bit of guilt or shame. And if you haven't really revisited that story in a long time, when I get people on an interview, sometimes they're caught off guard. Because in my podcast, I don't ask a lot of questions till the end. Like I let them tell their story. But then I might say, okay, in that moment, you kind of glazed over this, take us back there. Like, tell us truly how you felt. And sometimes, some people are just open book and they're willing to just, and then especially when I interview men, sometimes they're like, oh, I guess I was this, especially if they haven't shared the story a lot. And I warn them ahead of time and I ask them, I'm like, you never have to say anything you don't want to, but our guests will connect with you and your story, and you will make a bigger impact the more vulnerable you can get. Like, I just tell them that straight up. And when they go there, sometimes there's a lesson, but because they're so close to it, they can't see it. So as a host, I love to be able to see that and kind of unpackage it. And then they're like, yeah. And so they have that aha moment as a guest. And so when my guests can get out of being on my show as much as the listener can, it's a win. And not because, oh, I'm so great and so wise, but just hearing that story and unpacking it a little bit differently that is a win for me. And I would say 90% of my interviews, I have that, like where people are like, oh, I feel like I just had the most amazing therapy session, or, oh, that felt so good to revisit that and just express that. And, all of those things. So as a host, I like that. And I like to, you know, amplify somebody's business. If they're making an impact and I can share that with the world, who doesn't love that? It's just like Oprah. Oprah was the best facilitator on earth. And yet people like know Oprah Winfrey, but really she was just the host. She brought on the people with the stories, and she was able to unpackage in a way. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Oprah. Okay. I don't have that big a head, but just looking at it, like when you can bring somebody hope in any form, like, to me, that's fulfillment. Like that's what I'm, called here to do, whatever form that is. And so that's what I really like that as a host. And then the relationships that I'm building, the collaborations, like when I'm on somebody's podcast, and then, or if I'm on somebody's podcast, I'm like, oh, you'd be great on mine, or if vice versa, or, hey, I have a guy who he's in real estate and I think he'd be great for, and those connections and stuff, like that's really fun to build that. And you never know when you might, have a collaboration that can just explode your business or help your marriage, or, build friendships or different things like that. I mean, we're all entrepreneurs, we're online. And so I think it's always fun when we can, really collaborate and build those things together, because we're kind of odd ducks. Some people might think that we're weird the way that we think. And so when you can build those connections and stuff, and think, I had a guy yesterday that said, oh, good, I'm not the only weird one, like just with the thinking that you have. And so that's always fun too.
I feel like your coaching skills are going to help with that as well. And talking about helping guests to open up, I'm sure that helps.
Yeah.
When it comes to guests, have you found it's been, I know you mentioned that Podmatch makes it a little bit easier, but has it been difficult finding guests that you think this is going to be the right guest for you? They're going to be willing to open up about their story in a way that you hope for with your podcast?
Well, so for my first 18 interviews were all people I knew.
Okay.
So except for a couple, I think. So about 15 of those, like I knew personally, like, so I knew their story, and they were still kind of surprised as much. Like they were like, I didn't even think I was going to open up that much even to you. Cause even though they knew me. Doug Boughton was my first one, and he was like, man, I can't believe you got me to open up about that, but it felt so good. He was like, man, that was awesome. So that helped because I had those relationships. And now with Podmatch, where I don't know the person, usually if I match them, I let them know, hey, we go hard on a story. We go deep on this. Like, I need you to be vulnerable. If you can't, that's totally fine. But then this isn't the podcast for you. And some people, if it's not, that's fine. There's other ones. But for the most part, I had one gal that she was promoting a book. And I told her before the interview, I gave her specifics, like, we're going to go into a story, and then at the end, we'll promote your book and, do all that stuff. But like, I want you to go. And she pretty much just promoted the book the whole time. And so we got done, and it was short, and she asked me, and I just told her, I said, you didn't do what I asked, and I respect that, but I can't use this interview. Like if this is not what my guests would want. And she was coachable, and she's like, oh, I didn't even realize. And I had my husband listen back to that interview, because I was like, he goes, no, like she was all over the place, and like there was not a lot of story in there. And he was like, yeah, he actually thought she might have been high, like he just the way that it was. And I said, I coached her through. I said, we might be able to do the interview down the line, but like right now, like I'll look at it and see, but I just don't think I'm going to be able to use this. And so that was the only time that that's happened. But it also, I communicated to her, but obviously I thought that she was a little scatterbrained, and I didn't trust my instinct to be like, I probably should have stopped the interview even sooner. So it just helped me as a host being like assertive with, hey, stop. we're going to start the interview over, or you can come back like once you've thought of your story, that's so as a host, I just was like, I need to maybe prepare them more. And so now I just make sure when my guests come on, like I send them a message. And then beforehand, I'm like, are you willing to go deep into a story? Like, we'll get to your stuff. I promise we'll promote the crud out of you at the end of this. But like, I need my guests to connect with you so they want to buy your book or want to do your podcast or whatever. Once they've connected with you and felt in line with you, they'll go visit your website. They'll buy your book. You're going to have insights. They're going to be intrigued by that. But don't tell me all the scientific mumbo jumbo of your book in the middle of my podcast, because that's not the vibe. And people are going to be turned off by that and just be like, And I actually told her, I said, really, you shouldn't talk like that on any podcast, because when you listen to a podcast, most people, I'm not saying all, but most people listen to a podcast in their car, working out, doing laundry, doing another task. They want an easy listen, even if it's like strategies, even if it's tips. That's why people always say like 1, 2, 3, they want something an easy read. They don't want this scientific mumbo jumbo where they're going to actually have to use energy and brain energy to process it. Cause guess what? They're going to switch it to another podcast that's like murder mystery or, something that's an easy or a funny thing that they can just, listen to. And so I told her, if you want people to buy your book, let them fall in love with you. And then they're going to be so inspired, they're going to go read your book, and then they can highlight all the scientific stuff and do all that. And I love all the scientific stuff. I'm kind of like a neuro nerd. I love all like the brain and learn all the hacks and stuff. And even I was like bored. I was like, this isn't going to work, so she was teachable, but that's really the only, again, I was able to serve. I served her as a guest. I wasn't able to use the interview, but that's okay, because if she becomes a better guest and goes on and impacts people, then that's a great thing.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think that'd be really helpful for our listeners, whether they're guesting themselves, to keep that in mind, to get to the value, and also for those running interview podcasts, because it's difficult, like you say, especially if you're thinking it during the call, but even after, it's difficult to be that honest about it. So your honesty is inspiring, I think, there, because I feel like a lot of podcasters they just have the interview and then they'd just be like, yep, that was great, thanks for that, and then it would just never get released, and create an awkward conversation down the road. Ties in with a lot of other aspects of podcasting as well, like the titles, for example. You have to, a guest has to make people care, don't they? Like, I'm just looking at your titles and your latest episode, How to Practically Improve Your Communication Skills, with Danny Brassel. So you've highlighted exactly what the listener's going to get out of that before you've started talking about the guest. Whereas some interview podcasts, you'll find they just title the episode the guest name. And it's like, most people aren't going to care until they know what they're getting out of it.
Right. Unless you have a celebrity on there. If you have Matthew McConaughey, I might be like, Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
But most people don't know, the person. So yeah.
It's got to be like a household name for it to be worth doing.
Yeah. Denzel Washington on the podcast.
Yeah, that's all you need, and people will listen.
Yeah.
So you're a serial entrepreneur, I would say. You have various business entrepreneurial outlets. What are 3 things that all entrepreneurs should know? Because I know we've got a fair amount listening to this podcast.
I'd say the first one is your vision. I always tell people, it's like, if you do not know, and again, I know you hear this, and so I hate to say the same thing, but it truly is like, if you don't know why you're in it, if you don't know a deeper purpose than just like, I want to make money, like my vision, my purpose, some people tie those together, but the main reason why I started was because I wanted to build a better life for my kids, and I wanted my husband to be home more. I wanted time with him. We both grew up in very blue collar homes where it's like, you work hard and you spend, your hours, and you might get a little bit of money, but it's like you trade that time for dollars. And I we wanted something different. We knew that. And so I wanted a vision of our family together and building wealth. And over time, realizing what you could really do with money, and that money wasn't a bad word and all that stuff. And so it's like, I knew that vision. I knew my why. And when I really talk about it, it does still make me cry. They say that, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's like, if it doesn't get you to the core, entrepreneurship, it's not even that it's hard, because what's hard? My husband's a farmer. They go out in the 100-degree heat for, 14 hours a day in the summer. Like, to me, that's hard. So you can't even say entrepreneurship is hard. It is soul crushing, life altering, mental game. Like, I mean, it will just wreck you if you do not stay the course and learn how to manage your mind and keep that, that vision intact. And so that's really number two. It's like keeping your mental game just as strong as your sales game, or just as strong as your marketing game. You have to look at the mental toughness, and like what I call the mental conditioning, meaning what you're listening to, what are you, whether that's a podcast, an audiobook, or training your mind, surrounding yourself with the right people. If you don't keep that, I say mindset, and people but it's that mental toughness. You have to look at it like when you condition your body, you have to condition your mind if you want to stay the game. So you have vision, you have mental toughness. And third, this is a little bit, people may have not heard this, but forgiveness. You have to learn how to forgive yourself for not reaching your goals. You have to learn how to forgive other people for not, when you hire someone and they don't fulfill it to your desires, you have to look inward as a leader and say, how did I fall short as a leader that they didn't follow through? It could have been 100% their fault, but that has no bearing. That's not going to serve you. You have to look at, what could I have done differently? Should I have hired someone differently? Should I have said something differently? Should I have motivated them differently? What is my part in this? Taking that ownership in with the forgiveness piece. So like maybe we'll have 4 steps, because I think the ownership is truly important. But in that, if you don't have the forgiveness piece, you are going to guilt yourself into failure, because you're going to be like, you suck, you didn't hire the right person, you're a loser, you're never going to make, that negative narrative. Again, with number 2, that mental toughness, if you don't learn to control that animal, you will be defeated. And again, that's my podcast. It's like so many people, their narrative was so negative, it drove them to drink and become an alcoholic. And then they lost everything, and it wasn't until they learned to create that mental toughness, take ownership for their mistakes, but then forgive themselves and say, you know what? I didn't hire the right person, and that sucks. And that cost me $10,000. But you know what? I learned from this. I'm going to take what I can learn, everything else I'm going to throw away, and I'm going to move forward. Forgiving other people, forgiving your spouse for not supporting you. They might not see the vision. Forgiving your kids for trying to manipulate you into being home more, whatever it is. Having that forgiveness piece for me has really brought me joy. Because if your business is not bringing you joy, why are you doing it? Because you spend the most hours, most people, I mean, I'm part-time. I do about 25 hours a week, but most people, if you're a full-time entrepreneur in this, if it's not bringing you joy, those are the most hours of your day. Why would you want to be doing something that's miserable? That's why I told you I have to find joy even in those 25 hours. Like, that's bringing me my gifting and my joy. And forgiving myself for falling short on, I knew I should have probably got 2 more clients today, but I gave 2 podcasts that were really, really valuable. So I'm just going to, focus on that, forgive myself, don't live in the guilt, and move forward. So really 4, I gave you a bonus because I think ownership is really strong in there too. So we have the vision, we have mental toughness, ownership, and forgiveness.
Love it. Thank you for that. And I think even if any listeners aren't, entrepreneurs, I think a lot of those things could be applied to podcasting as well, especially taking ownership of anything that goes wrong. Like you say, I mean, there was only so much you could do to control that interview. When you got that interview, when she was just talking about your book, but I guess I'm sure there were things that you thought, oh, what can I tweak in terms of the guest onboarding process that could prevent that from happening again?
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Cool. And one last question before we wrap up. If we take it back to when you first started podcasting, well, it's up to you. We can talk about the original podcast or the current podcast. What's one thing you wish you'd known from the start that would have made things a lot easier for you?
Well, the very first one, I did know like you could outsource, but again, I didn't really have those connections. So that's why I talk a lot about like collaborations and connections and the people that you know, because that has helped me, take quantum leaps in my business. And you can go on, Fiverr and all these things, but it just really helps when you have like referrals and connections, I think, because that would have been one if I would have had that connection earlier, maybe I would have stuck it out. But it was a different premise too. And my business has changed from that. So again, I'm kind of like, okay. But from the very beginning of this one, I actually wish I would have found Podmatch earlier. And I'm not saying that somebody didn't mention it, because they might have, and I may have just like glazed over, like, oh, didn't really think about it. But if, again, a connection, a friendship, somebody that I interviewed or had me on their podcast, we built a friendship. Then they mentioned, hey, have you tried Podmatch? I'm like, no. And so then I got on there and I saw how great it was. So that was probably one. And then just, I can say like working on my YouTube channel, like getting subscribers just for people to view that, or, promoting, saying stuff like, hey, share this, like this. I get a little, I'm really not a shy person, but like self-promotion kind of makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
So and I think that's why I do interviews too, because I'm not, I'm a very confident person, but this whole like, hey, like this, do this for me. Like, no, I wanted you to do it for you, and just getting really good about promoting the podcast, because I know that it's so good for other people. And so maybe doing that more in the beginning, but yeah, I learned a lot from my very first one, and I tweaked a lot of that into this one. And I'm sure in a year you'll ask me and I'll be like, oh, I wish I would have done this differently, or this onboarding process differently and stuff. So you're constantly growing, and you can always look back and be like, should have done more promotion, or I should have done this differently. And it's ebbs and flows, but overall, I'm really happy with how it's developed and where it's going. Of course, we all want more downloads. We want more subscribers, more, viewers and stuff like that. Just because the impact is broader, but at the same time, it's like, I'm happy where I'm at, and we're growing and developing as the show goes.
Nice. Yeah. No, nobody has to be perfect when they first launch. But
no.
Being open to new connections, new tools and things like that, it sounds like that's been something that could be valuable for people.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, okay, for sure. Don't try to do it alone.
Yeah,
don't try to do
definitely.
a podcast alone. Put it in, look at like investing in your business. You can even take out, like, there's money out there, because that's being in real estate. People are like, I don't have the money to do this. There is money out there. There's funding. There's people. You can even build connections where someone might sponsor you. Like they might say, hey, I will back this if you put my business on a commercial in there. Like, you don't have to have the big sponsorships to do that. It could be someone where they help cut the costs and you can put their business in there. Be creative. So like, don't try to do it alone. I feel like just because your time is so much more valuable than money, that if you spend all your time doing it and not looking at what's actually going to monetize it, which is getting it out there, getting connections, then you're going to you're going to get that frustrated, and you're just going to end up quitting.
So if anybody listening is looking for a new podcast, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you want to hear these stories that Tabatha has managed to get the most out of her guests, these stories of bouncing back from failure, they're only 30 minutes or so, nice and bite-sized. Is there any particular episode that you guide people towards if they're trying the podcast for the first time, or just start from the most recent? Yeah,
there's just the one that I did. I think it's the last one that was released, and his name's Jason. Whew, like even my husband, he listened to that one, and he was like, what that guy went through, holy cow. because he had a $20 million mortgage business and he went bankrupt. That's all I'm going to say. So it was,
yeah.
And he was such a great guy, like, to interview. And he was so open, and the stuff that he went through, very vulnerable. And so his story was, but I mean, honestly, I mean, people that like were going to commit suicide, or the, alcoholic, like lost everything. I mean, just so many. And women who like didn't even want to take care of their kids because they had such bad postpartum, and so it really ranges. I mean, we have a lot of business stories, but there's a lot of other stories too that just can really pull you in. So the women listeners, we have some great, amazing women guests that just will blow your mind. So yeah, check them out, binge watch it. Listen.
Yeah, I mean, just have even if you're not sure, just have a scroll through the titles. So what went wrong on Spotify, Apple, and everywhere. The titles, they're really enticing. Like they make you really want to find out what the story is. So
right,
just have a look.
And I did a few in the beginning. I just took famous stories and shared little tips too at the beginning. And if my audience wants more of that, I will do that, because I found it interesting when I was researching this. And I just take the story and like condense it way down. I'm not doing a 30-minute. I think I did a 30-minute. My husband and I, we dissected like 3 different businesses in one, or like I tell like the Dyson story, or how bubble wrap came about, like just stuff like that. To me as an entrepreneur, so interesting. And so those are kind of at the beginning stages, and we might do more of those if people are like, yeah, we really like those. But again, I'm trying to give my guests what they like to listen to, and so that's just what we're doing.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to scroll back and have a listen to some of those ones as well. And if they if people want to connect with you directly, is there a particular platform that you're active on?
I check Instagram and Facebook pretty much daily. And then keeplegacywealth.com is where like our free resources and like our free school group is on there. If you are interested in buying your first income property, we have a great free resource. Just, connecting with me, asking questions. One of the reasons why we created that, and again, even with the podcast, was because we'd meet entrepreneurs and we'd tell them what we do, and they'd say, oh, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to invest. And I just always ask them, like, well, why didn't you? And oh, money, I don't know, like, how's it look like that? And so we just have a free resource. And then in the group, we break down different ways that you can come up with the money and different stuff like that, and connections with other entrepreneurs. And that's keeplegacywealth.com. But Instagram, Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't check LinkedIn as much, but that soon should change. And YouTube, more content coming out on YouTube. All of our podcasts are on YouTube, but also any other coaching and different things like that.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tabatha. And I hope it all goes well with the podcast this year.
Yes, thank you so much, Joe.
I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Podcasting Amplified. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favourite podcast platform. We'll be back next time with another conversation offering more insights to take your podcast to the next level and help you to achieve success. Happy podcasting.